All right, welcome back to the DataWORKS training. We're talking about engaging all students, engaging all students. So we already talked in the previous video about our strategies, pronouncing words, tract reading, gestures, pair share, left partner, right partner. I want both of you to talk. The attention signal really for classroom management. Whiteboard so everybody shows an answer and I can see everyone answer and I can even see if there's any mistakes. And we're going to speak in complete sentences using the academic language. Now let's go a little bit further. Let's add a little bit of brain research. So how would brain research tie into this part of student engagement and why is this important? So I'm going to click up the brain research. These are our student engagement strategies we just went over in the last video. Now let's try to connect these to brain research. So how are these helping kids learn? Not just to be engaged, but actually helping learn. So let's look at this first part right here. The brain takes in 40,000 pieces of information per minute. Most is not retained. Brian, I know if you look around your room, you see what? The windows, you've got distractions. I've got the poster behind me. I've got my cameras. I've got different things. The brain does not just memorize everything it saw. And actually, this is the difficulty of education. You've got the teacher talking, and we're not tape recorders. We're not just memorizing everything said one time. Now, this is the next big idea. The brain cannot distinguish between what to remember, the teacher talking or talking in the cafeteria. The brain cannot distinguish what's important or not important to even try to remember. However, Brian, we're going to read this together. It's so important, and this would be a classroom practice. We're going to read together. Let's read. Ready, go. The
The
brain
brain
retains
retains
what
what
is
is rehearsed
rehearsed and
and
applied.
applied.
Okay, so this means what? Rehearsed and applied what you use, rehearse, repetitions, going over it again, and applying it to a situation. So here's the research down here, and you may not have seen this, but the basic brain research, 24 repetitions. Everybody remember that. It takes repetitions to get the long-term memory. So right here, 24 repetitions. So let's just think about this, what's happening. How do we get the brain to remember? If we look right here, here's the teacher talking. Our first memory is called the sensory memory. Brian, let's say that together. Ready? Sensory
Sensory
memory.
memory.
And sensory is from our senses. It's really what we see, in this case, or what we hear. So right now, you're seeing the screen and you're hearing me talk. You're understanding every word I say as I talk, but most of it is just being forgotten a few seconds later. You're not a tape recorder. You're not remembering it. Now let's look at the next part of our memory. It's called working memory. Let's say that together. Ready, go. Working
Working
memory.
memory.
Now this is really our consciousness, our thinking, okay? And we can remember a little bit longer, just a few seconds here, but a little bit longer. But we really need to rehearse it, practice it, talk about it, or do something. But this is our consciousness. Now here's another part of brain research you need to know. Our working memory is very small, 3 to 7 items. We can't think of much at the same time. Mostly what we're doing is we're using our long-term memory. We're swapping things in and out from long-term memory, and then we're thinking about that. But we can't hold too many things at once. And Brian, have you ever tried to count and then somebody asks you something at the same time? You're counting to 10 or to 20. You can't do it. 1, 2, 3. What did you say? Oh, wait, what number was I? It's impossible. Our brains are too small. Some people used to joke that 7 is the length of a phone number. And that's about how long we can remember as a phone number. But a lot of long digits, you probably have not memorized them unless you've used them a lot, like a credit
Yeah.
card. If you've keyed it in a lot, you might remember it. But most of the times we don't remember this. So now here's the application for teachers. Most of the things you do in the class, like identifying a noun or a verb, you're doing it from long-term memory. You already know which words are nouns and verbs. You already know the definitions. The students do not have that background. They're only getting it from what you're saying. So the implication here is you need an overkill. You need to over-explain. You need to simplify it. You need to explain it again. And don't be confused by how simple it is for you. Brian, I don't know, did you ever teach math?
No, never math.
Oh, okay. Well, just let me tell you my experience with math. I think there's even some research on it, especially at high school. Math teachers are so talented in math that they can't realize why the kids don't understand it as well as they do. It's so
Uh,
natural for them, they think it should be natural for everyone. Okay, so my message to high school math teachers, you need to model, you need to explain every single number you write on the board. Don't just write the number, but explain what you're thinking was. Why did you subtract 10? Where did you get x squared? You really need to model every single thing you're doing because you're working from long-term memory, and the kids need that detailed explanation. Okay, so basically the idea is we're trying to get from the teacher talking through sensory memory to working memory and what to long-term memory. And then we need these repetitions to get there. And then, of course, then we want to be able to retrieve it back. Now, here's a perfect example. Brian, if I said, what's 6 times 8? I'll bet you could tell me the answer right now.
Yes. 48.
Yeah, sure. It's easy.
Yeah.
Now, think about how you did that. When I said 6 times 8, you went to your long-term memory, retrieved it, and brought it back. You didn't calculate it, you just retrieved it. Now, think about you're in a classroom. I've seen a lot of high school classrooms. The high school students, they don't know the math facts. They cannot tell you 48 is the product. That's because it's not in long-term memory to be retrieved. They've never memorized it. Okay, now this is an eye-opener. You can't punish them or give rewards or something. It's not there to be retrieved. So let's make sure in our instruction we're getting to long-term memory so the kids can retrieve it and use it later. Okay. All right, so how can we get some of these 24 repetitions? Some of these, they're right off of our engagement norms. Brian, let's read the first one. Ready?
Choral reading.
Now, we know in choral reading, sometimes we pre-read difficult text and have the kids read after us. So that could be 2 repetitions, choral reading. The pre-read, the track with me. Track means really track reading was follow with your fingers for very young students. Have them touch each word. It's very effective for beginning readers, that they're connecting what they're hearing to what they're seeing on the page.
So for an older class, what would track with me look like?
An older track is just eyes on the page and follow with your eyes. I usually put the cursor up or my finger, or I point or something. It's eyes on the page. I think, Brian, at older students, the track with your finger it's actually slowing you down.
Okay.
Because as we become better readers, we're reading in clumps. We're reading almost instantaneously. We can recognize every word. For beginning readers, they're really decoding one word at a time.
Okay.
So that's what we have them point for the beginning readers, but not for older readers. But their eyes have to be on the page. They're not just listening. I want them to see the words, so we're supporting that reading. Okay, the next one, let's read it. Ready? Go.
Pair shares.
Now, we already know pair shares count twice because what? I'm going to say it once, and you're going to say it once. Okay, so that counts. Now, answering questions, I don't know if I said already, generally we call 3 students. So we get to hear the answer stated in student voice, maybe 3 times. And generally, as a teacher, don't you kind of paraphrase, elaborate on whatever the students answered? There are 3 students we call, and then the 3 repetitions from the teacher elaborating. Okay, the whiteboards, of course, now we're not just thinking of the answer, we're actually writing the answer. And a lot of times we have the students write their complete sentence on their whiteboard, so that's another repetition. Then, of course, we might do several problems. During skill or guided practice, we might do 4 and 5 problems. And homework, we do more problems again to get extra repetitions. And homework, is not to learn it. It's repetitions to remember it's automaticity, fluidity to get it faster. Okay, so now look, I've got a checking for understanding question, and this is kind of the example of how you should have a lesson in the classroom. In our DataWORKS lessons, we have a written checking for understanding on every slide, and we should use our tracked reading and have the students read it with you. I'm going to use the pre-reading this time. For older students, we would just read it together. Okay, Brian, here's our question. I'm going to read, then you're going to read after me. How will you provide interactions in the classroom? Your turn, go.
How will you provide interactions
in the
classroom?
So now we're going to answer the sentence frame. This is how you're going to answer. We're just going to say blank for this, and we're going to say blank here. And this is what you're going to write on your whiteboard. So let's practice how we're going to give our answer. Ready? Let's read together. Go.
I will provide interactions by blank because blank.
Now notice my sentence. I use the word interactions because that's the academic language I'm using on the page. Okay. Right? I want to repeat that thing so you'll be practicing to use it. Here, multiple interactions. Interactions include. How will you provide interactions? I will provide interactions by. So this is how you do a lesson. You want the students to start using that vocabulary over and over. All right, so now I've got my hints for myself: whiteboard, pair share, go first, non-volunteers. All right, Brian, I don't know if you have a whiteboard, but in webinars, a piece of paper will work just as well. If you can get something where you can take a couple notes, which of these interactions would you use? Now, they're all important, but pick one or two which you would use and be ready to explain why you would use it. So I'll give you a minute to write that on your whiteboard. Now, in the classroom, we've got the sentence frame already, so when we say now, once you get your whiteboard ready, I want the A partner, that's the left partner, to go first. I will provide interaction by blank, and then put what you put on your whiteboard. So we'll wait for a second as if we're doing a pair share. Okay, now the whiteboard, the command is chin it. So Brian, chin it. Can you hold up your paper so I can see it? Okay, great. You've got your answer right there. Now, I'm not going to read your answer for you. The rule is the students have to read the answer. So can you read your answer?
I will provide interactions by pair sharing because this will allow students to learn by rehearsal and repetition.
Yeah. And I noticed you said rehearsal and repetition. There's another level in here. I don't know if you ever heard the phrase, the person doing the talking is doing the learning. And now when the students are talking to each other, they're actually learning while they're talking.
Okay.
See, I don't know who wrote that. I don't know if it was Confucius or somebody, but the teacher's talking is getting the most out of it because they're saying it themselves. Now when you talk to your partner, and sometimes I use the phrase, instead of explain to your partner, I said, teach your partner how to solve this problem. So that's a great answer, and the pair share is one of the good ones. I mean, they're all good, but the pair share is a good way to get repetitions. So I think I'm going to stop right there. And we've talked quite a bit about brain research right here. We're trying to connect the brain research into why are we doing these student engagement strategies? Well, we're doing them two reasons, just to have the class to be engaged. Well, actually three reasons. Classroom management to control the students. But another reason we're doing it is to help the students learn. All these interactions are giving us repetitions to learn. Okay, Brian, can you just give me one summary, maybe something you learned overall today about brain research or anything on this page that I talked about today?
Yes, today I learned that it takes at least about 24 exposures for information to be placed into the long-term memory, transferred into long-term memory.
And the risk here, if the teacher does a 45-minute lecture, it's generally a one-time pass over a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to say the long lecture is not brain compatible. And sometimes high schools say, well, I'm preparing students for college. And your response is, I'd like the students to know more before they go to college. So if we can get rid of these long lectures and put some interaction into them, I'll just tell you, in Texas, I just did a history lesson. And right away at the end of the slide, I knew, okay, students, explain to your partner who was the historical figure in here and what was the philosophical ideas they were trying to convey. We would talk and report. I do another slide. Okay, what were we trying to do here? Summarize the slide. Explain to your partner what happened. And all of a sudden, the students are talking in history. So I know that idea to what? Do a little checking for understanding on every slide, and the kids are learning a lot more than just passively sitting there listening to the teacher talk. So try to get this interaction. It's not that hard to do. Okay, Brian, I think we're going to sign off right here. This was our second in the series. We did engage all students, and then we said, let's apply some brain research to why these strategies work and why we need to do the interaction and connect the engagement to what actually how the brain learns. So I think we're going to sign off right now, so I'm going to say goodbye to Brian, and we'll come back later with another series.